I feel like I've been serenaded. This isn't the easiest sermon I've preached, although it's a good thing I know something about the topic. Last Sunday I preached about my sabbatical and about Sabbath. This is my last Sunday, and I see it as a celebration of our time together. I will be back. I will just not be your minister for the rest of this year. I will be in touch. I will be also promoting my book, which is for sale outside in the lobby, and what I want to talk about today. I've been thinking about Daniel Limbaugh, who was a layperson who in 1899 came to Dallas from Mississippi. He came here to start a Unitarian church. I don't know a lot about who he was, except that he arrived here, met the Unitarians who had gathered, and gave the seminal sermon in 1899 on December 3rd at Temple Emmanuel that formed our church. In it, he said, "Many souls are hungering and thirsting for religious knowledge, truth, and righteousness, to whom the old dogmas, doctrines, and creeds appear outgrown." He was speaking in 1899. 118 years ago, telling people that there are people in the room for whom the old dogmas, the old traditions, the old religion they had outgrown it, that they were looking for something else. Now, he did say that they were also making shipwrecks of their spiritual lives, which meant that he was offering something else. He was offering a path which he called Unitarianism. A different approach to understanding God and one's place in the world and one's faith. In that speech, further down, that no one in this church quotes, are some great quotes about the word faith. He said, "And the great word faith is used in a wrong and degenerate sense when we are told by faith to hold beliefs, which critical reason and experience make against. Superstition, that mother of the multiform evil, is nothing else than the clinging to some belief in the misused name of faith, in despite of experience and reason. Let us rescue the great word from that degradation. The real faith, which is a power for truth and good, is not the opponent, but the helper of understanding and experience." I never read those words until I came to Dallas. I never knew that 118 years ago, the preacher speaking to the first gathered Unitarians was asking them to reclaim the word faith, but to expand it beyond the common meaning. The question I have had all my life is, what does it mean to be a person of faith that doesn't rest on a belief system? The question to me is, can you be a person of faith without the dogma that is so often attached to it? The old notion that someone is faithful because they are a believer stopped making sense to me when I was a child in a Unitarian church. Because I believed a lot of things. I believed God was love. I believed people were good. I believed we could be redeemed by our actions. I believe we have purpose that drives us toward unity, and we have responsibility to work toward that good and that purpose. But because I didn't believe Jesus was God who was sacrificed for our good, I was an unbeliever. Somehow second class in the Christian world I grew up in. But I didn't let that stop me. I went searching. I went looking for religion that could hold me and nurture me. And I finally came back to Unitarian Universalism as an adult. But I came back hoping what Daniel Limbaugh hoped for the Unitarians of Dallas in 1899, to reclaim a notion of being people of faith. So in my searching, I read all kinds of things. I read books by Buddhists and Hindus and Catholics. And I came across Richard Rohr's book, Everything Belongs. Rohr's a Catholic, a mystic, a bit of a radical in a way. In his book that's really about prayer, he wrote, "My religion has lost sight of Jesus' message. It has not tended to create seekers and searchers, or to create honest, humble people who trust that God is always beyond them. We aren't focused on the great mystery. Rather, religion has tended to create people who think they have God in their pockets. People with quick, easy, glib answers. That's why so much of the West is understandably abandoning religion," he says. "People know that great mystery cannot be simple and facile. If the great mystery is indeed the great mystery, it will lead us into paradox, into darkness, into journeys that never cease. God can most easily be lost by being thought that it is found." I knew that belief was not enough. That to be a person of faith, I needed to have a self-understanding that went much deeper than an assent to some belief system where I could sit back and claim the high ground. So I went on a lifelong study, and I am still looking. But I found a model, just something to hold me in a whole lot of questions. At first I thought it was a graduated process of spiritual maturity, that I would land here and then I would get a little better and I'd get a little deeper. But then I realized that it could be that we are faithful because we develop lenses in our lives, not as we go down steps like the yellow brick road. That we develop lenses, that we develop a self-understanding that challenges and holds us each. Not a day has gone by in the last 10 years while I've been formulating this and then writing my book over the last 4, in part a gift of my last sabbatical, that I haven't thought about this paradigm. I learned from the Jesus Seminar theologian Marcus Borg, who learned from theologian Wilfred Cantwell Smith, that faith can be composed of more than belief. That faith can be belief, but it also can be trust and loyalty and how we understand the world or how we see it. And the composite of those 4 give us a sense of who we are as people of faith. Belief is okay, but it's not the end. Alan Watts said, "The believer will open his mind to the truth on the condition that it fits in with his preconceived ideas and wishes. Faith, on the other hand, is an unreserved opening of the mind to the truth, whatever it may turn out to be. Faith has no preconceptions. It is a plunge into the unknown. Belief clings, but faith lets go." Belief, Alan Watts, that Buddhist teacher from the 60s, said, sits down in the road and waits or rests. But faith journeys on. And trust is part of faith. It is asking us not who we trust, but what. What in the world can we put our trust in? Most classically, it is put trust in God, but how do you define that God in light of how you trust others and what you trust in the world? And faith can be also loyalties, where you place your commitments, how you understand the journey of your life that is behind you and ahead of you as part of how loyal you are to the things in your life, the people, the values. And faith can be your worldview, how you have composed the sense of the world. How am I designed and taught to understand the world, and how can I be aware of that so that I can observe my own observations? So in faith, if it's not just belief, it can be the composition of these 4 aspects. It can be a lens, a continual self-exploration, the kind that Daniel Limbaugh wanted the Dallas Unitarians to embark on. A grounding when the world seemed insane. when the believers retreat to their corners, a system of composing, a grounding faith in one answer, in one way, a compass for spiritual life. And what starts to happen is faith that begins to help us let go, free ourselves from the bonds of the religion of the past, and wraps us in a deep self-understanding where we begin to join others in a purpose for good in the world. We start to act and not sit down in the road. We start to reject orthodoxy or right belief in favor of orthopraxis or right practice or action. Examples abound. In the Bible, Jesus is asked by the lawyer, how do we attain eternal life? He says, love your God and your neighbor. He doesn't say, believe in this proposition. He says in so many words, act and give and be compassionate and be passionate and lift up the poor and protect the weak and hold in esteem those who mourn. Those are all action items on the spiritual list. I have told stories like this before about people acting out of their faith, not acting for a dogma, but having absorbed so deeply who they were as people of faith acted in the world. And the one story I love so much is a story about a Buddhist monk who comes home one evening where a thief is sneaking around in his hut looking for something to steal, but you might imagine a monk really doesn't have anything to steal. And so the monk comes up to the thief and he says, you've come such a long way to visit me. You should not return empty-handed. Take my clothes. And he takes off his robes, and the thief is bewildered, and he runs out into the night, and the monk stands naked watching the man run away. And he looks up at the full moon, and his response to the event was not, I hate that man. He said, poor fellow, I wish I could give him this beautiful moon. And there's a modern story I have told here before about a man named Julio Diaz. He's a man who lives in the Bronx, and he goes to work every day on the subway. One day he gets off the subway and he climbs up the stairs, and there's a young man there with a knife who says, give me your wallet. Many of us would have run away, but what he does is says, okay, here's my wallet. And the young man takes it and starts to go away, and Julio says, hey kid, it's really cold out here. Come here and take my coat. And the young man is confused, but he comes back. He didn't learn this in Robbery 101. And he takes the coat and he starts to go away, and Julio says, you know, you look hungry. You want to go get something to eat? And the bewildered man says, okay. And Julio and the young man go to the diner where Julio eats every evening, and everyone knows him. He walks in, and the manager greets him, and the dishwashers greet him, and the waiters come to say hi. And the kid says, you know everybody here. Do you own this place? Diaz says, no, I just eat here a lot. He says, but you're nice to even the dishwasher. And he said, well, didn't anybody tell you that that's what you do with people? And he said, yeah, but I didn't think people really behave that way. And they had a conversation. At the end of it, Diaz asked him, what do you want to do with your life? And the young man has no answer. And at the end of the meal, Diaz says to the man, you know, I'd love to treat you to dinner, but you have my wallet. And the young man gives Diaz back his wallet, and they pay for the meal. And as they're going out, Diaz says to the young man, can I ask you one more thing? Can I have your knife? And the young man hands over the knife. I don't know what Diaz believes. I do know what he does. He acts out of a faith that is built on a deep trust in human relations, in a loyalty to friends and to the idea that we can change lives with acts of generosity. And he sees the world with wayward souls, not as enemies, but as friends. There is a deep confidence in the monk and in Diaz because they are people of faith. Not believers per se, although I don't know if Diaz is a believer. But they are composed of a deep, soulful fabric, something that I have sought to own, sought to cultivate. The poets Levertov and Rumi that my colleagues read today say faith is a walk toward wakefulness. It is knowing God deeper by knowing your actions and why you are who you are. It is waking each day to worship the world. Rumi says there are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. And Levertov, at the end of her poem we read today about meeting a difficult day, didn't say, the answer is, I believe something. She says, the answer is, I can, which implies action. Faith is being open to knowing the answers and seeking deeper responses that push us to know ourselves and ultimately to know the holy. Faith can't be given to you. It is earned. You are part of the equation. And that is what my book is about. A small book, for sure. The editors were a little ruthless with me. It's a tool. It's stories of people I have met in my journeys who embody the kinds of faith I'm talking about today. It is a hope for you to deepen and reclaim the notion that we are people of faith even if we are unbelievers. That we are ready to meet the world with generosity and a hope for each other, and to join in the purpose to make the world a better place, one spiritual life at a time. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get something out of it. And as I said in my last sermon last week, the Sabbath sermon, I love you and I will miss you. Journey on in faith with each other and with my dear colleagues, and I will see you soon.